You are listening to the Autism Mom Coach, the PTSD of being on display. Welcome to the Autism Mom Coach podcast. I am your host, Lisa Candera. I am a lawyer, a life coach, and most importantly, I am the full-time single mother of a teenager with autism. In this podcast, I am going to share with you the tools and strategies you need so you can fight like hell for your child without burning out. Let's get to it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I am so glad you are here, and I hope you are doing well. I have gotten so many messages on last week's podcast episode about being on display. I've heard from clients and listeners about how much this episode resonated and recalling so many of their own experiences in this exact situation. What became so clear from the emails I've received and the conversations that I've had is that there is so much trauma around this topic. So that's what I want to talk about today, the PTSD and the trauma that so many parents feel around being on display. Not every meltdown is a time to take a stand for autism awareness and autism acceptance. The priority is safety for you and for your child, both physical and emotional. Let me give you an example of one of these moments that I experienced in my own life. This was over 10 years ago when Ben was 5 years old, and we were at the 9th Street Beach in Ocean City, New Jersey with friends. It was me, my then boyfriend, and his 3 children. We had gotten there around 10 a.m. or so, and the kids were doing great. But after an hour and a half of this, I could tell Ben needed a break. He was just being a little bit rammy, a little bit whiny, and I could just tell this is time for us to take a step back, go onto the boardwalk, get something to eat, and regroup. However, the other children were all knee-deep in this sand creation that they were creating, and they just needed a few more minutes. So I convinced myself, sure, we'll be fine. Just a couple more minutes. We can do this. I don't know how much I believed it, but I wanted to believe it. So sure enough, within that 10-minute period, Ben was done. He had expired. And so he's running around in the sand in between other people's setups. At the point where I realized that it was time for us to go and to take a break, Ben saw one of those upside down sandcastles that a kid makes, by getting a bucket of sand and flipping it over. Ben saw that and he kicked it. And so this woman comes up to me and she says, "Your son." And I'm like, oh God, what did he do? She said, "He kicked over my granddaughter's little sandcastle." After all the things I'd been through with Ben that past year of school, him kicking over sand on a beach was like pretty low drama to me. She was very rude. She was very abrupt, telling me I needed to control my kid. And so I did just blow her off. 5 minutes later, Ben does the same thing again. I see this because Ben's not 10 feet from me, and I'm going towards to apologize and to get him off the beach immediately. At that point, this grandma picks up my child, my 5-year-old child, and throws him to the ground. I pick up my son, he's shaking and crying, I'm shaking and crying, and I ran. I ran off the beach as quickly as I could, gathering my stuff, and got on the boardwalk. There's no part of me that recognizes the woman who ran as being me, in the sense that I am not one to back down from a fight, especially when I feel like I am in the right. And I will certainly defend my child, and I will certainly take ownership for when he does something bad. In the imagined retelling of the story, I would have reacted very differently. I would have stopped right then and there. I would have demanded justice. Maybe I would have pressed charges, all of that. I did none of it. I got off the boardwalk immediately. My then boyfriend and his children were still there. Other people saw what this woman did, and they had all ran towards the lifeguard to alert them. I did have the option to press charges, but I was so traumatized myself, and I assumed that my son was too. And the only priority I had right then and there was getting out of harm's way. Now, I will say, in my 17 years of parenting, this is the most obscene, dramatic situation I have ever been in with my child, thank goodness. But it happened pretty early on. He was 5 years old, and it had happened after I had said to myself and out loud, we need to go it took a long time for me to get past that I knew and that my instincts were to leave and that I didn't do it. And because I didn't do it, that happened. Now, of course, never ever would I've ever predicted that another adult would put hands on my child, but that's what happened. And so that was a trauma that I carried with me for a long time. And we call this the beach witch incident because after we were on the boardwalk, Ben says to me, "That beach witch," he kept calling her the beach witch. And that was just hilarious. And so we've kept the name ever since because it was appropriate. That incident really startled me because I was on a mission since my son was diagnosed that I was going to take him anywhere and everywhere, that I was going to make sure he had as many experiences as possible to expose him to other children, to other opportunities to socialize, and to just experience the world. And that one thing really made me rethink all of it. I was afraid. I felt like I couldn't trust myself. I felt like I had no idea what other people were capable of. That's trauma. That is something that lives in your body. When you experience something overwhelming, something your brain perceives as a threat, your nervous system activates a survival response. This is the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And if that happens often enough, if you've had repeated experiences of being judged, of being misunderstood, or being exposed in public, your brain learns and your body learns. So when you find yourself panicking before an event or shutting down in a moment that feels too familiar, that's not overreacting. That's what your nervous system is doing to protect you based on lived experience. So, what to do about this? How about just stop caring what other people think? Look, if only it were that simple. I agree that so many of us would do really well by caring less about what other people think, but that is not something that we can just magically do because we are human beings. We are wired. We are programmed to care what other people think. At some point in our ancestry, this was a matter of life or death. If people didn't like you, you were out. We are wired to care, and your brain's job is to keep you alive. So it prioritizes anything you believe is a real or perceived threat to you, and it reacts in kind. That's just biology. There are things that you can do to interrupt this pattern, but just know this is not about the type of person you are. It's because you are a person. I am trauma informed, but I'm not a doctor or a trauma expert. So if you are dealing with any sort of deep-seated trauma, I really do suggest that you pursue professional guidance. That said, what I am about to tell you can only help and it can't hurt. So the first step in healing some of the fear of being on display is being really, really kind to yourself. I talk to clients all the time and I ask them, what is your self-talk like? And honestly, it is shit. It's really bad. It's really blaming. It's really judgmental. It's a lot of the things that I was feeling about myself after the beach witch incident. And that just digs you into a deeper hole of not feeling like you can trust yourself. And so if you've had these experiences of being on display, if the very idea of it just makes your chest tighten and your stomach squirm, then your job right now is to be really kind to yourself and to validate your own experience. This will help you remove whatever shame or guilt you might be feeling. For example, I just coached a mom that was in a situation of being on display, all eyes on them, record scratch, the entire event stops, eyes on her and her child. And when I talked to her, the level of judgment that she was having of herself was making a really difficult situation so much more painful. This is the part that we really can help ourselves out with, and we're the only ones to do it. Being on our own sides, showing ourselves compassion, validating our own experiences, acknowledging this is really hard. That is the first thing we need to do. And if you did nothing else, you would create a better, more supportive relationship with yourself. The second thing that I recommend, I've done for myself, I teach my clients, and this is not so much towards healing the trauma, but it's preparing ourselves for the reality of we might be on display when we go out into the wild with our children. We might be on display in our own front yards for some of us, right? And so the fact is, it might happen whether we like it or not. And so there is a practice that I've used that has helped me so much, and I want to share it with you. But before I do, I want to set the scene. This was 5 years ago. My son had just been hospitalized inpatient at the hospital for special care for kids with autism. And during that time, his public school agreed to outplace him to a more therapeutic setting. What this meant was that every day a van would come to our home, pick up my son, and take him to this new school. And I had such high hopes on this school that they were going to be able to help my son in the way the public school didn't. My son wanted nothing to do with going to school whatsoever because he had been completely traumatized by the experience. So on one hand, you have a child who doesn't want to go to school. On the other hand, you have a mom who is desperate for her child to get on this van to go to this school so they can help her child. Every day was a battle. My son would yell, he would scream, he would run, all sorts of things before he got on that van. And because it was COVID and everybody was home, we were providing a show to the entire neighborhood. Anybody who would look out their window, walk by with their dog. And it was mortifying because I didn't have control over the situation that I was trying to control. So after about a week of this, I really thought I was going to crack. I'm like, how on earth am I going to do this every day that he needs to go to school? Like this was not sustainable. And I was scared to death. At the same time, I was taking a lot of data on my son's behaviors from day to day just to see if I can spot any trends. The behaviors day by day did vary, but there was one thing that was always true, and that was he always got on that van. Always. So once I realized that, I was like, okay, I can work with this. It's going to be a shit show for about 20 minutes, but he's going to get on that van. That was really helpful to me. So what I did was I combined that mantra with the skill that I want to teach you today, and that is called mental rehearsal. This is a way that you can prepare your brain, your body, your nervous system ahead of time. Because remember, your brain and your nervous system don't know the difference between real or perceived. So you experiencing an event in real time and you thinking about that experience and having the same thoughts and the same emotions arising, your body and your brain don't know the difference between real or perceived. And you can use this to your advantage. And the way that you do this is by mentally rehearsing yourself going through a situation. For me, it's imagining waking my son up from school and making him breakfast and feeling the intensity of his questions and feeling him getting dysregulated, feeling my agitation rising, and then me doing something to calm myself down. Imagining the van pulling up and my son starting to scream and again, my anxiety rising and me doing something in real time to calm myself down. Over and over, just repeating that process of mentally rehearsing the thing happening and you working yourself through it. So when you do this mental rehearsal gives your body a blueprint. It teaches your nervous system, this is what it feels like when I'm anxious. And I also know how to calm myself down in these moments. It's like building a muscle. Now, mental rehearsal is science-backed and it is fascinating. It is something that the Navy SEALs do, CEOs do before big presentations, Olympic athletes do, picturing themselves in a high-stakes scenario, something going wrong, having to readjust, picturing themselves doing each move in exactly the right way over and over again. There have even been studies of people who actually lifted weights for a period of time, and then people who visualized themselves lifting those weights, triggering the same muscles in the same way. And those studies showed that the people who were doing it visually had an increase in strength, even though they had never touched a weight. So this stuff is powerful. And again, you can think of it as a simple meditation where you are calming and relaxing your body, mentally walking yourself through a difficult situation and giving yourself that proof of concept within this simulation that you know how to calm yourself and regulate yourself no matter what is going on around you. All right, everyone, that is it for this week's episode. If this episode resonated with you and you want to work with me one-on-one so that I can teach you these tools and so that we can apply them to the very specific details in your life, schedule your complimentary consultation. You can do that right now by going to the link in the show notes. Thanks for listening to the Autism Mom Coach. If you are ready to apply the principles you are learning in these episodes to your life, it is time to schedule a consultation call with me. Podcasts are great, but the ahas are fleeting. Real change comes from application and implementation, and this is exactly what we do in my one-on-one coaching program. To schedule your consultation, go to my website, theautismmomcoach.com, work with me, and take the first step to taking better care of yourself so that you can show up as the parent you want to be for your child with autism.